Every so often you come across a chisel where the handle is broken and you need to replace it. Turning a chisel handle is very simple. We're going to show you how to turn a basic chisel handle just to replace or restore a chisel to its former glory. It's very simple, very quick, and in about 5 minutes you should be able to replace a chisel handle on the tang of a chisel. I've got a very basic lathe, nothing fancy, no special chucks or anything. I'm going to turn between centers. I'm upcycling an old plane, so I've cut bits off this over the time, and I end up with several blanks that I can use. Handles come in many different shapes. You can use octagonal handles. Most of them will be turned for speed. That's one I've just finished. I'm going to make this one for a chisel handle, but it could just as easily be for some other tool. So just to get in the right place, I'm just going to go corner to corner. The overall thickness of this, the width of it, is square, obviously. And when I'm making a handle, I make the handle, I cut my dimensions on my wood just slightly larger, maybe a 1/16 larger than the finished handle diameter, the largest diameter of the handle that I want. So I've already sized this to 1 1/4. I'm finding my centers by going corner to corner just like that. And here I'm just going to take, let me put my glasses on so I can see. These are safety glasses. I'm not going to wear a dust mask because I want you to hear me clearly as I'm turning. So I'm going right on the middle here with an awl just to get me in the center for the start of my turning. This centers me on the drive chuck and on the tailstock. So here I'm going right in between on both ends. This isn't, yeah, it isn't. So cinch your tailstock down when you've got your distance. Tighten it. You've got to remember all these safety aspects of the lathe are going to be for you. I can't give you safety instructions on this particular video. Cinch everything down. Make sure everything's spinning freely. And start your lathe away from there. Just make sure you're centered nicely and set your tool rest according to the gouge you're going to be using. I'm just going to probably use 2 tools. I'm going to use a spindle gouge, and this is not a lathe turning tool. This is a 1/8 mortising chisel, which works perfectly for what I want. So first of all, I'm going to take all the corners off here with the gouge. Start at one end. Take off your high spot. Until you get down to a round. So I'm down to the round now. I can feel it's not bouncing. So everything is working fine. You'll suddenly feel it go smooth when you get to where you want to be here. I've got my spur drive here. I don't want to catch my gouge on there. So I'm staying quite a way away from it. And now I've taken all the flats off and I have a round rod that I can turn my handle from. So this is the point here. I've got a 1/2 inch gap here I don't need. So I'm going to tighten up on the gap, get rid of the gap a little bit. And now I'm going to start shaping my handle. So this is the handle basically that I want. I want this one but slightly bigger. So I'm going to put the ferrule on this end here and then make the main handle at this end. What length do I want? That's going to be up to you. Any length, any shape, whatever you're making the gouge handle for. If it's a gouge like this one, you'll need a fairly big one. If it's just a saw file, you'll need a fairly small one. Okay, I'm going to, first of all, I want to work on the overall length of the spindle here. That's going to be the handle. But the first thing I have to be concerned about is the size of the ferrule. And ferrules will vary in size depending on the size of the tool you're working with. So what I do, first of all, is I take the overall width of my ferrule on the outside diameter, and that's going to make the little tenon on the end here slightly bigger than I need, and I'll turn it down to size after. So I'm going to make a mark on here for you to be able to see what I'm aiming for. I'm going to take my ferrule and put it here and just mark the shoulder of the ferrule there, and then the overall length is there. So I'm going to part that down using the parting tool here. That's going to give me the overall start of the That gives me the start of the ferrule, and then here's my shoulder line here now. So that's given me a close approximation of everything. Now I'm going to go with my spindle gouge and take out the bulk of the waste because it's quicker and easier. Here, just take out the bulk like that. I'm going back to this, and I'm going back to the caliper that I use. So I'm going to put the caliper on here. Now I'm already too small there, but here is where I start. So here I just press the caliper against the side of the tenon until it slips on, and the same on this one here. Now it slips over, so between those 2 points is the size of the outside of that ferrule. So I can take out that midsection like that. Now I know that's too big. I'm going to test it with the ferrule, the actual ferrule here. So there, it's barely going on. It's not really on. It's on a tapered end here. So I can take this off now, and I can use that as a very clear guide for the final sizing, or close to the final sizing. I'm going to take this down a little bit there, and then I'm taking this down in the middle, and I'm actually making this a little bit cork shaped, so it's actually a tapered tenon to start with. So here we go. So we're going on there. I've gone on now about 1/4 of an inch on the end, which is close enough for me to feel confident that I can continue along there and fit my ferrule. A little bit more closely. So now I'm close. I'm not going to finish it. I'm going to now start shaping my handle. So here I'm using my spindle gouge, taking off the bulk of the waste down to the ferrule. And my overall length is going to be how I visually see it. That looks as though it's exactly where I want to be. Take out a little bit of this waste here. I don't want to go too thin here because I still want to shape this inside, this main body here. The thinner I go here, the more vibration I get. So I'm listening. If I get vibration, I ease off a little bit. Make sure everything's cinched tight, because things do work loose on the lathe sometimes. So I'm coming from this high spot here, rotating my gouge to get a smooth cut. I'm riding the bevel. This is the bevel, so I'm riding this bevel as I work. That gives me a nice smooth passage Now here's where I want to take out some of the waste here. Before I go any more now, I'm almost done with this. The shaping is done. I want to maybe sand this, get it smooth. I'll do that in a minute. What I'm going to do is go back to my ferrule now, just to see how close I am to this fitting. You can see I'm still quite a way. It's not actually going on, but I want this to go on very firmly with just a little tap at the end so that it seats, so it's not loose. So now I know it fits up to this point here. So now I come in with my chisel right into the corner, and hopefully this will be close enough to fit this. Now you've got to be careful because often one end like this is going on and this other end is not going on. And this open end has a little bevel on there, and that's the end that needs to go up against the seat of the shoulder. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to revert now to this. I'm going to tighten this up because I know it goes on to here. So I'm going to make this, size this for here. That's sized, and here I can feel it biting here. Can you see that? Now here it's going on, and that's where I know it fit. So I can take this, arm in a safe place, and I take this chisel and I just move this along with both tools at the same time until it slides over the hump there. I've left just a little bit on there, a little bit of extra width. And although I can't get this to seat all the way because I don't want it to, because when I drive this on, once it's on, it's irreversible. I can't pull it off. But I'm pretty confident now that when I drive this on, after I've got my holes drilled and I've got this fitted for a handle, that I'll be able to drive that tightly home. One thing I might do at this point, and often do, is I might put this on to the lathe, because this is just a rough, will it fit? Probably not. Yeah, that one fits. Sometimes you can put, I'm going to put this on the lathe here now, and just while I've got this together, pull this out of the way, and I'm just going to take some abrasive papers and get the roughness off the ferrule out of the way. Just like this. So I'm starting to smooth up the ferrule on the outside, and I would do that with several grits and leave it at that, and then I could even polish it after. So I've got that down to where I would like it to be. So there's my ferrule off. Back on here now, and just a little bit more fitting, some shaping, some sanding, and that is my handle almost done. Okay, so I like the shape of that. Pretty happy. So the overall length is always with a parting tool generally. So now I'm not worried about bending too much. I'm going to part down the upper end of the chisel here. I'm taping the corners off. That's actually about as close as I need to go. So I've created a dome on top of the chisel handle. I feel happy with all of that. All I've got to do now is sand this smooth. Dust mask is important for sanding. And you're basically going to sand until any rings or any unevenness is taken out. Make sure that's locked out of the way. Now I just need the overall length of the gouge, of the ferrule onto here. So ferrule goes here, mark it here, just so you can see it. That's my overall length. So I can take this down now, like that. And I have a little bit left to cut off, the same on this end. A little bit left to cut off. There's one thing I like to do while I'm on the lathe, and that is to apply some shellac while the tool is still on the lathe, the handle is still on the lathe. So I've just got some shellac here. Nice thing about shellac is you can apply it when the lathe is running, like this. Give it a couple of seconds. Let that one dry. And then apply another coat. Flip over to a dry spot, help it to dry. Like that, it's feeling dry. Another coat. Leave it on, don't leave it on too long because you'll drag the other finish off, so very important. So it's nice and dry. Fourth coat. And the last coat for me is there. So I'm leaving that to dry. Fold over again. Leave it to dry for a few seconds. You don't have to leave it very long. And then take your tissue, just paper towel, and polish it out. And the end you can catch later. So there's my handle almost done. So I'm going to part off a little bit closer here. You can part it all the way off, but probably, if you're not used to this, probably you should just saw that last little nib off both ends. So I go closely, as fine as I can. And this is where you catch it, like that. And that's your chisel handle. There's your ferrule. And you are ready to fit this to whichever tool you want. Just to finish off, now you can see what we got from our upcycling here. This handle came from this part of this old plane. It's going to get resurrected into a chisel handle. I'm ready to fit everything. The only thing is I want to take off this nib here and this nib here, which I usually do somewhere like this on the edge of the bench. Just work around the nib here like this with a sharp chisel. This one I've left a little bit bigger than I might normally leave on there. Just work around it like this and then just pare into the surface. Well, we're going to actually drill that out too if we were going to fit this to a chisel. Same on this part here, just a quick slice them there. Remember, this is end grain, so we're going to be hammering on this with a chisel hammer. Fitting this ferrule now. This fits, I've got this nice and snug. I can't quite get it on with my fingers. Into the vise, square onto the end here, and press it home like that. Just to make sure you seat the ferrule fully, You can use a second ferrule or a tube of steel, whatever, just to make sure it's fully seated. There's my chisel handle completed. I just have to put a little, I don't know if I would put finish on this end, it's not necessary, because you're going to be hammering it. So I've made a couple of more here. These are just different ones, any shape you want. You can. This is the nice thing about turning, is you can turn any shape you want. This is the most basic of all the chisel handles there is. This one gets you exactly where you need to be. It's one of the best designs, and this is just to show you how you can make any chisel or tool handle without much of ado at all.